A sentence like this is both ridiculous and anticipated. In 1932, Australia declared war on Emus. The Great Emu War of Western Australia was a real conflict, despite how absurd it sounds. The birds without wings were fought off by soldiers armed with machine guns. Hello and welcome to our channel. Today we are going to talk about how the Australian Army once launched a war on Emus and then actually lost. What did the Emus do to war in a fight to the death? Following the Great Depression, Western Australian farmers had been having trouble with their crops, and their problems multiplied when 20,000 Emus migrated inland during their breeding season. Up until 1922, the birds had been protected as a natural species, but after they were labeled as vermin, everything changed. More than 5,000 Australian veterans of World War II used government funds and land to start farms in the hostile west of their country. For the ex-soldiers, life was challenging but not impossible. But in the 1930s, the world economy was wrecked by the Great Depression and Australia was devastated by a drought. Even worse, 20,000 rampaging Emus attacked the western crops. The Emus had moved from the country's center. They looked for protection and water, and the excellent wheat from the farmers. Australia was about to declare war on the Emu in 1932. No one could have predicted how tough the conflict would be. One surreal war veteran told the Herald, "There's just one way to kill an emu. If his mouth is closed, shoot him through the rear of the head. If it's open, shoot him through the front of the mouth." That is how difficult it is. There were many reasons for the farmers to be angry. Canberra has urged them to cultivate wheat in the past by stating it would lessen the effects of the Depression. Even though Parliament had promised to do so, it had not. George Pearce, the Australian Defence Minister, was besieged by a group of soldier settlers who requested assistance from him to combat the birds. They also desired machine weapons. The minister backed down. Instead of veterans operating the guns, he would send soldiers. Emu elimination would be a recognized military effort. He gave the assignment to Major G.P.O. Meredith, commander of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery. 3 men, 2 troops to control the guns, and a movie-tone news reporter to record the battle accompanied Meredith. With a supply of 10,000 rounds of ammunition and 2 Lewis machine guns, the troops intended to obliterate the beasts. A Lewis is an American gas-operated weapon that saw widespread usage in World War I. It draws ammunition from a firing pan that may contain up to 100 rounds. The gun has a 500 round per minute rate of fire. The soldiers, both on active duty and former, believed the birds had been defeated. Early in October, Meredith and his men arrived, but an unexpected downpour scattered the birds and forced them to abandon the plan. Later in the month, the soldiers made another trip. In the western Australian town of Campion, Meredith and his men made camp. Then a group of 50 Emus started to amble around. Meredith gave the farmers instructions to flank the Emus and scare them into the firing line since the birds were out of machine gunning range. The Emus, being intelligent creatures, instead fled toward a neighboring tree line. Meredith gave the guns the go-ahead to fire despite the distance. While the first round was ineffective, the second one injured several birds. The men, underestimating the intelligence of the Emus, the ineffectual employment of machine guns, and the low number of emu losses, established the rhythm of the battle in this scene. About 1,000 Emus migrated away from the trees and toward the lake on the morning of November 4. Meredith and his weapons were waiting. The soldiers fired their Lewis guns as the birds closed in. Numerous Emus died. The hundreds of remaining Emus fled to the cover of the trees when one machine gun jammed, which failed miserably. The birds were more intelligent and swifter than expected. They frequently evaded the troops' machine guns before they could aim and fire. The guns need to be brought near and kept close by Meredith, so he made the decision to attach a Lewis to a farmer's truck. It went horribly. The vehicles were still unable to keep up with the Emus even when the gunner and his 30-pound weapon were added to the mix. Even worse, it was difficult to aim due to the choppy ride. During the operation, no soldier fired a shot from the back of a truck, but one resourceful farmer did use his vehicle to run down a sluggish straggler. The Emu crashed through the automobile and became tangled in the steering wheel, making the hit and run unsuccessful. Before coming to a stop, the truck veered off the road and drove through a fence that was several feet tall. As the campaign went on, the soldiers received less than favorable coverage in the local press. Australia's government called in the army as a result of the negative news. The commander reported the destruction he caused to the birds in reports submitted back to Canberra. Meredith claimed that when his troops used up all of their ammunition, about 1,000 Emus perished. He stated that 2,500 additional people suffered injuries and died as a result. It is impossible to confirm these statements. Other observers' estimates of the dead Emus varied from 100 to 1,000. Meredith might have exaggerated his own figures. The answer is unknown. In his account of the occurrence, he noted that the emu is an incredibly hard bird to kill outright. Many carry lethal wounds up to a distance of half a mile. Beginning in December, the commander, his men, and the Lewis machine guns returned to the east, leaving the farmers to defend themselves against the Emu danger. And they did battle. Over the course of the ensuing few decades, the farmers slaughtered hundreds of thousands of birds. A report from Australia estimates that between 1945 and 1960, exterminators caused the deaths of about 300,000 birds. The ancient troops, though, never gave up attempting to send the military west. In 1934, 1943, and 1948, the settlers made attempts to use machine guns against the Emus, but were unsuccessful. Parliament never again sent armies against the mighty Emu, possibly recalling the mountains of negative headlines and humiliating lack of dead birds. The Emu War was a defeat for Australian forces. With this, we conclude our video. Let us know what you think about this war in the comment box. Thank you for tuning in. To ensure that you never miss an episode, please subscribe to the channel.